Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm so grateful to those who still have enough patience to continue watching this very long annual review. We are almost at the end. As a start for today's video, I selected Game of Thrones, one of my first books, and it's very rare that I have some coloring books in Ukrainian edition. Usually in Ukraine we don't have any coloring books apart from books by Johanna Basford and Millie Marotta. Usually we have a couple of books which were imported from Russia, and all the rest, if you're interested in coloring, you need to order from somewhere abroad. So I was quite happy when I managed to find this book in the very beginning of my coloring hobby. Also, I was happy to discover that paper is relatively good even for water-based mediums. So, in the very beginning, when I just started to color, I started to color with color softs. It was my first page, and I realized that with such huge spaces, my color softs very quickly will be over, and that's when I started to experiment with other mediums. You can see that on my very early works they definitely lack contrast, lack shading, but it's very interesting for me to see a difference from my first works than to my later works. The only sad thing is that I hadn't touched this book, I think that more for a year already, and probably I need to put this book somewhere close to my working table, and maybe I need to color something here during next months. So let's start. I started to do these pages with family science, and I think that here I used mix of pencils. I even used a lot of Derwent ink tens for the background, then color softs, watercolor, and I added some budget pencils, so whatever I had at that moment. Some of them are better, some of them look a little bit childish, but at that moment I was quite proud when I added some details on the moon behind, when I managed to do something similar to real metal. At that moment I really struggled with all metals, with silver, with gold, and that's when I realized that I really need to look closer at a reference photo if I want to learn how to color all those metals, that it will be very helpful, one of the most helpful subjects, how to do metals if you want to move forward your coloring skills. It was interesting to select colors according to the story, traditional colors of each family, and I love that I combined mediums here, so they look nice with this more matte background and slightly waxy cover of color softs. And of course at that moment I was totally terrified by these very detailed designs, by portraits. So almost all portraits are still uncolored. Then it was moment when this book was very popular, so I think that I looked too much at the colored portraits, and that's why I hadn't colored a lot the most popular characters here. But at least I did this Varys, and I do love his portrait, everything, a lot of elements colored with watercolors, and I'm still surprised how I managed to do it. All those folds and shading on the fabric, and I imagined that maybe some of them are velvet, some of them are made from silk, definitely some velvet with golden embroidery. It was very interesting to do. I think that only on some parts like skin tone, like this paper straws, I used pencils, so I do love these various portraits, and maybe now I finally feel free from my fear to color portraits, to color very detailed pictures. I managed to forget all other colored pictures by other colorists, so I think that maybe it's perfect moment to return to this book. I even thought that maybe this can be my first finished book, because for some time I really colored a lot in it. Here I tried to find balance between blue hair and bird and mustache according to the book, and I simply can't stand the idea of this blue hair. So my diario has blue with a little bit of bluish tint hair, and it was very interesting to do. All those folds on the fabric, there I already started to realize how important to leave highlights on the metal and to do nice strong contrasts in the same time. A lot of very good memories arrive for me when I look at these pictures. A lot of very good memories about beginning of my coloring journeys, and I'm still proud of many of these pictures, like this one. Again, almost everything here colored with watercolors, maybe just for some details on the face, and on the ravens I used pencils. So I'm still surprised how I managed to do it. I think that now when I color less with watercolors, my skills, they are at a lesser level comparing to these first works. I totally had any idea how to do fire or smoke properly, so again it was challenging but interesting to do. Again I struggled with fur here and with color of the snow. So many interesting things. I think that it was my second work which I did, and it's good because everything here I did with intense pencils. I think that when I colored it, I hadn't remembered properly the story of the children of the forest, so I colored only according to the colors of Inktense which I owned at that moment. Here probably is my least successful picture, because I had this good idea about the rays of light coming from the top part through the leaves, but I did them too straight. I used a white oil pastel as a masking, so I draw those lines, and on top of the oil pastels you can't apply watercolors, so I did watercolor around, and these areas they left white, but probably I just put too many of those rays of light and they look very unnatural. Maybe I just had to put couple of them and it would look better, but anything else I still love. I also have here one picture by Stanislav Tomic. I think that this was my first picture where I tried watercolors in this book. You can see again that it lacks shading, contrast, that everything is of the same hue of colors, so not so light, not so dark, without nice strong contrast, but still it was interesting beginning. So I started this page by Stanislav Tomic. I don't know why, I was distracted by some other project, so my high garden isn't finished. I remember how I tried to mix colors for the ocean water. That was one of my favorite projects. Here I deliberately made this very soft colors, like on the sky, like it's a nice early morning. You can see that a little bit of cream, a peach, lavender, lilac. I used a very diluted with water, very tender watercolors. And then on the towers, on the remaining parts of the building, I did these dark areas. They look like it's dried blood. Oh, my pronunciation, it's a terrible thing. So I hope that you can see these red-black areas, and they look a little bit sinister, so I do love this idea which I added to this page. Here probably I was tired of realistic colors, so that's why my sky looks so strange. Here I can't say that I am very happy, again because we don't have difference between elements on the foreground and everything which we have on the very detailed background. I had to use stronger contrast between background and foreground. But as I said, in this book I had a lot of pictures where I learned. This is page which I want to do, really want to do. A lot of beautiful pictures are waiting for me in this book. Here I used a lot of color softs and Derwent drawing pencils, so that's why all the elements of clothes, they look muted, not very bright, and I think that it was good idea for this page. Oh, here it was interesting. I played a lot with these bright colors. I was mesmerized by that idea of the green fire, and I very carefully worked to show all those reflections of the green fire in the surface of the water, and I added a lot of gold. Here I think that I used Kohinoor Mondeluz for dragons, and I tried to maintain their original colors according to the book. On this page I first learned which colors of watercolors I can mix to create more realistic shading on the snow. So another important page for me. I colored a lot of pictures here because at that time I participated in Kolorowanka on Instagram, and each week we had to finish one of the selected pictures, so it was really very helpful. And now when I don't have similar Kolorowang, such a inspiring, pushing movement, then now this book is abandoned. As I said, unfortunately I hadn't touched this book for more than a year. I love to color in this book using Kohinoor Mondeluz. Especially lovely they look on top of the watercolor background, and that's my favorite technique. I think that I abandoned this book after I did this page with eggs, and I thought that by adding find a color or watercolor to the eggs would be a nice idea, but in real life they don't look very good, and I would prefer now that I color them with pencils probably. And it wasn't very inspiring page for me, so somehow it triggered my desire to put this book away for some time. But now I'm totally ready to return to it. So that's it. I also have the second book about Game of Thrones, but here the story is very sad because I have just one portrait, and again I had huge plans regarding these books. I selected pictures which I wanted to do, but my usual tale about not enough free time, it's exactly what I also can say about this book. I want to color so much, but I never have enough time. Maybe I need to rewatch some of the seasons of Game of Thrones during this Christmas and New Year holidays, and maybe it will be a nice inspiration to do at least one other page here. Surprisingly here, I used even cheap pencils for children. It was Faber-Castell Eco, because at that moment I didn't own pencils like Polychromasis or Arteza, and I preferred to work here with slightly darker pencils, so mix of color softs and Faber-Castell Eco was very helpful. I think that when, not if, but when I decide to color in this book, I will try to use polychromasis. They will be very good. And of course, for the huge landscapes, I intend to use paints. Next book in this review will be Escape to Shakespeare's World. In previous videos I have already demonstrated you my finished pictures in Escape to Oz and Escape to Christmas Past, but Shakespeare's was actually my first book which I purchased from this series. I immediately fall in love with the artist style, with the size of the book, with the paper quality. I started to color here when I didn't have Prismacolors, so here I started with budget pencils and with color softs. Here I colored everything with color softs and soft pastel. Exactly the same thing here, color softs for the portrait, budget pencil here. Then I tested the watercolors somewhere on the last pages. Here I discovered that paper is also great for watercolors, and I was crazy happy. This spread I also did using color softs, and on top of it, especially on the central dark part, I also used fine tech watercolors, so dragon is very shiny, and I'm glad that my dragon doesn't look like a very sinister dragon. He is quite cute and even smiling despite the fire. That's exactly why I decided to use all those pastel lavender, pink, pastel green colors, so everything is soft and nice. Definitely my dragon is something which you imagine in children fairy tales, not in horror stories. It was interesting project. Here I tried to show in tutorial how to use stencil with various circles, and I do love this idea. Normally I wouldn't color such image. I'm not a huge fan of skulls and all those internal things, so to say, but here the idea was good to use bright colors only in couple of places, so I still think that page looks quite creative. This one was definitely fun to do. I used Inktense for the background, especially for the right side. It wasn't very easy to decide what to do with the unicorn. It looks flat, but at least I added some acrylic paint in bronze and copper color, so my unicorn is surrounded by some shiny sparkles. As usual, I didn't put any bookmarks here, so sorry. This spread I colored totally with watercolors. I'm glad that for this Venice picture I selected a little bit unusual colors, maybe like all white marble palaces highlighted by the light rays of the evening sun, so that's why everything is peach, pink and lavender. The only thing which I colored with pencils, and it was this fish. I think that I simply ran out of ideas which colors to use, which watercolors, so I switched to pencils to do this last final element. A lot of very nice pictures here. I always want to return to this book. This picture I did during this Mermaid, and I think that here I used probably either watercolors or neon colors for the first layer of background, and then Prismacolors, of course. Here I tested some watercolor pencils. I had a very limited set of 6 colors, so I didn't finish it. It was only for trying new pencils. This one I definitely love. It looks a little bit strange. Usually I am not a person for coloring insects, especially spiders and other disgusting things like all those bugs. But here I really wanted to try my new dusk watercolor, and it was dusk pink. It's a watercolor with granulating, so that's why I have this interesting black stains. It was colored with just one watercolor, but it created this interesting gradient from pink to almost black. And on top of it, to make this page less intimidating, I added those silver lines, so in real life it's even shiny. I don't know why, but for me, the most inspiring pictures here are from Macbeth and from this Comedy of Errors. They definitely not my favorite books by Shakespeare, but pictures from them are the most interesting for me. So I always wanted to do this one and this one. I hope that one day I will be able to do it. And this spread I did, I think that 3 years ago when I had to color something for Halloween and I didn't have any pictures with something for Halloween, so I selected this spread, and apart from watercolors and color softs, I used a lot of golden and copper acrylic paints, which I was able to find in my local art store. So even now I am quite happy how this spread looks, even if it's very old. This one again was made with color salts, but also with a little bit of Prismacolors already, and I do want to do the second part. I don't know why I abandoned this one. It's very nice beginning. Maybe later when I will be doing the right side I will finish this one also. And I think that it's probably all for this book. I always wanted to do this spread. Yes, that's all. I hope that one day I will be able to add Alice's book, Alice in Wonderland, to my collection, and I hope that maybe Good Vibes and Warriors would decide to add some new books to the same series. I really love this size and type of books. And we will be moving to the book by Lenka Filonenko. It's one of the few grayscale books where I really enjoy to color. You know that really grayscale not exactly my type of books, but here gray is very delicate, and I do love this idea of the book dedicated to dances. And of course paper quality also is amazing. So for now I have only a few finished projects here, but I still love all of them. I did this Paris using watercolors for the inner part, acrylic paint for the outer part. Then I even used alcohol-based markers for the skin, for the dress. Then on the skirt I added some additional brighter colors with pencils, so it's a very mixed media picture, and it's very shiny. I really love all pages here. Another one which I did using toner acrylic gouache is this one. Because of the white flowers I wanted to mask black lines, so I worked with opaque medium here. And I really love how I added those white spots which represent sequins on the dress. I think that lady looks quite shiny and festive. On the next page I tested my set of black widow pencils. I purchased two sets and one of them was for coloring dark skin tones, and I was pretty happy how those pencils behaved here. Because of the limited amount of colors, I was uh, I don't know. I was limited to those colors, so I had to invent this color combo. How to do darker areas, how to do skin, how to mask grayscale areas, then how to add highlights on the cheek to create some kind of blush. And I think that it looks nice. For the bright part of the dress I used polychromasis, I believe. The only thing I'm not very happy here, I think that I definitely abandoned her crown. Maybe I had to add more contrast because now this top part, it doesn't look very real, it definitely lacks some shading, and gold doesn't look very shiny. But at least I'm glad that I did this very pastel background which doesn't distract attention from the lady, and I would say that she is quite beautiful. Let's move. Oh, this one was interesting to do because when I started I had this clear idea that I want to do an evening picture with a lot of evening lights, but in the same time I wanted to do this tender magnolia in contrast with strong colors of their dress and shirt. I'm very happy how everything looked, even if I had to use many various mediums. Started from watercolor, then a little bit of dots using Posca, then circles using neon colors, acrylic gouache and paint for the flowers, and finally for the main characters polychromasis. Polychromasis are my favorite medium for this book, for the dancers. And for the background, I definitely can experiment with everything I own in my art stash. A lot of nice designs here. I was very interested to do this one. I love this picture. It looks like illustration to Great Gatsby, and I wanted to do this dress with a lot of sequins and fringe. I did it using black acrylic paint and a white Posca, so I think that I managed to show this ornament and embroidery on the dress. For the muted colors of the background, I used toner acrylic gouache from their Japanese series where all colors are muted and relatively dark. I think that probably that's all for this book, and I also need some kind of reminder that I have to color in this book more frequently. I definitely want to do this one. Now we will be moving to the books by Anastasia Koldereva. The first one which I have here, which is easier to get from where I am sitting, is this book about dragons. Just let me turn it to the first page because it was my last finished image. And from the beginning, I think that here I used Prismacolors. It was some kind of my test page. Here I did a watercolor underpaint. Then for some elements I used pencils, but most of all I am glad that I also added pearlescent watercolor, so the spine, the back of the dragon is shiny. It has some very delicate color accents, like on top of green I added a little bit of pink, a little bit of lavender, so in real life it looks very lovely. I love dragons, I love succulents, and that's why I love this book so much. I can't say that I colored a lot here, but at least those pictures which I finished I love with all my heart. And it was one of my most popular pictures finished during this year, according to your likes on Instagram. It was a very interesting rating for me, but I totally agree that it was a very interesting process for me, but also very successful finish. I even hadn't expected it myself. Probably my most brilliant idea for this page was when I added this lemon yellow and blue to the tips of the spikes and also to the tips of the wings, and together with more muted colors of the shelf. But in the same time, this shell, it has also similar color accents but relatively paler comparing to dragon. But it also has a little bit of blue, a little bit of magenta and lavender, so everything looks very well balanced. And of course for that page, Pastel Watercolors by White Knights, the new series, was very helpful. This one I did mixing alcohol-based markers, you can see it here, and then probably German drawings, and for the dragon himself I used polychromoses. Maybe. I don't remember. Anyway, again, a lot of various mediums. One of the most interesting dragons, colors of the dragons which I've ever colored is this one, this shell dragon. Again, I did first couple of layers using alcohol-based markers, and it helped me to do this very light area along the front part of the neck. Then I moved to Prismacolors. You can clearly see their beige colors, their French grays, peach colors, and of course a lot of great lavender. Great lavender and slate gray were my top pencils for this page. And finally I have here this, yes, that's all. And this, remember that I did this one also because I love this shape of flowers. They are very beautiful. Again, I tried to add many colors to the skin and to the scales of the dragon, so it's mostly olive green, but also with golden, violet, lavender and bright green areas on the body. Maybe I had to work a little bit more on the area of the background, but I was afraid that background with more colors would distract attention from the dragon himself. And finally, this underwater dragon, and I am quite proud of this page. I did it together with that pink dragon. Here I selected this page because I wanted to test new bright green watercolor which I recently purchased. So I did this green water. I decided that I don't want to do traditional blue water. Then gradually I was thinking that on the scales I want to combine two types of them. Some of them have to be golden and some of them have to be blue and violet. I was afraid that I won't be able to unite both types of the scales for one dragon, but as I added some reflection of the blue and violet into gold and also some golden shining on the blue and violet, in the end I am very happy how skin and scales of my dragon look now. Mostly I used polychromoses. That's it. Now let's have a look at Anastasia's portrait book. I have only one of them. You know that portraits isn't my very strong side, but somehow in Anastasia book it's easier for me to color portraits comparing to Hanna Karlzon or other books. Maybe again because portraits here have a very delicate gray shading, so I can use this Anastasia's hints where to put shadows. For now, I did several pictures here. This one was my first project here, and I remember that I worked on her skin for a week probably. I still love how she looks, but I was so tired when I finished her skin and hair that I totally abandoned it. Good thing that I think that I have a video about how I did all these elements, so I will be able to finish these elements in the same way like I did on the left side. And then I think that I want to do golden background like I did on her nails. She definitely deserves to be finished. All other projects here I finished. If I started, then I finished. And probably this one is... oh no, it's not my favorite. I honestly love a lot of portraits here, but I do love all. And when I see picture with all, I immediately want to do it. I'm also proud that I added these elements on the background, which looked a little bit empty for my taste. Here I wanted to play on this contrast with this cobalt blue and reddish color on her hair, and in the end I'm pretty happy how everything looks, with more muted colors for everything and just some of the bright elements here and there. This one I did because I really wanted to do these peonies. For me, they reminded me about beautiful peonies which I saw in China. Here it was very interesting to do black hair, and I even tried to delete some part of the hair to add some highlights. I scribbled. I do love her violet color of the eyes. I can say that my attempts to do skin are very successful, but as I said, at least here I can use Anastasia hints where to put shading, so my girls usually looks not so flat. Here I immediately had this idea of fantasy color of her hair, and actually I used a lot of polychromos pencils, various shades of orange, various shades of magenta, red violet, dark violet colors, and to create contrast to orange and magenta I love to use lemon yellow and muted green, and that's exactly I did. But most of all here I do proud of my attempts to do this light skin tone with freckles, and I like her green eyes. Maybe she deserves that I would show you closer her portrait. Again, I am moving so slowly, maybe I need to do it a little bit with better speed. So what else I have here? No, I definitely had another one here. This one I did probably in the beginning of this year, or maybe during the beginning of the last winter. Anyway, that's why I used the red for her dress, because for me it reminded me about beginning of the Christmas season, even if we have here these autumn leaves. Anyway, I am glad that here I again used contrast between muted colors on the background and a very bright dress, and of course I had to color also. It was easy to choose which page I wanted to color. A very nice book, and of course I intend to color more in it. Now I do have another two books by Anastasia, but here I have this book by Hanna Karlzon, so maybe I will show you this one and then I adjust my camera to show you books of bigger size. Hanna Karlzon definitely isn't my most favorite artist. I usually never know how to color such faces, but usually I admire to watch works by other colorists in Hanna Karlzon. So I love her art, but I simply don't know how to color her books myself. I don't have any of her books apart from this magazine, Coloring Haven. And I think that I would like to color this one. Maybe one day I will find time. For now I have several finished pictures here. Not many definitely, because I wouldn't like to color something like this with such thick black lines. It's totally not for my taste. But some of the pictures are very lovely, like this one or this one. I have this Pinocchio picture. I used Neocolors probably for the background, then a lot of Prismacolors. Well, she is nice. Yes, for me they look childish, but at the same time it's a good opportunity to play with your alcohol-based markers, to use bright colors for her girls. The only thing is I totally don't know how to do their noses. The same thing as the same problem as I have with Jasmine Beckett Griffiths, but there I managed to resolve it, and here I still haven't decided the best way. This one, I think that I hadn't finished it, or maybe finished but without any inspiration. Mostly I used alcohol-based markers here, and I don't know when something went wrong, but I'm not very happy how she looks. Maybe background would look better with more bluish and not violet color. I used Neocolors here apart from the dress. Anyway, the remaining picture is here. Here I am much more happy with the final look. I do love her tender dress, again mix of alcohol-based markers and pencils for stronger contrast where I liked colors of markers, and I do love this background which I made with Neocolors and a lot of white paint. That's all for Hanna Karlzon. Probably from time to time I will be coloring in this magazine, but I am not sure about separate books by Hanna. Maybe I have to watch more YouTube tutorials how people color faces of her girls, because she has so many beautiful books, Christmas books, Victorian time, steampunk books, so I do love her girls. I still have to decide how to color them. Now let's move to my two remaining books by Anastasia Koldereva. In her books Legends about Mermaids, I did this big spread. It was my first one with watercolors, obviously, because watercolor or neocolors is the only one medium which you can use to cover such a huge area of the page, because the size of the book is just it's huge. It's probably the biggest book I own. Interesting, I think that here I used color softs to... I definitely can recognize some of their colors. On the second page I experimented with different color for the background, this yellow-green. It was my first attempt how to do scales on the mermaid tails. And much later I did my third finished project here, this one. This one definitely looked much more detailed, with bigger amount of colors with stronger contrast. It's very shiny in real life because I outlined many elements with pearlescent watercolors, or I simply mixed this pearlescent watercolor on the background with a regular watercolor. Fun thing that for part of the image, like this seaweeds or part of the bodies of these fishes, I used highlighters, regular highlighters, but in pastel colors, so for those which we can use when we read something and when we need to mark something, and highlighters also can be helpful for coloring. Her tail is also very shiny with golden elements, so I do love this page. And I also have her huge dragon book where I did this first autumn Halloween picture first. At that moment I was very proud of this background where I added some small dots representing fall leaves somewhere far from the dragon, and dragon looks very cute. I always loved its head, all elements which we have on the head, tiny pumpkins and candles, and face of the dragon is very cute. And another project which I did here is this dragon with sweets. Soft pastel colors of neo colors were very helpful here, both for the dragon's body, for the background, and then of course for the sweets, for the lollipops, I used Prisma colors. A very nice dragon, very cute. And this one is mostly watercolors. Then for the dragon, color softs, I believe, and for the princess dress, which is also with a lot of white dots, so it looks shiny, I used Prisma colors. It's nice to remember my first attempts to color dragons, and I still think that this book is one of the best books about dragons, because they have very interesting surrounding elements, and we have some guarding dragons, underwater dragons, some dragons surrounded by flowers or other botanical elements, so it's never boring to color. As usual, I didn't find time to do page with this sleeping dragon and with Santa, but maybe next year. I can only hope. Anyway, I thank you for watching another one of my long videos, and I think that I will manage to do one final video with my remaining books where I did just one page in each of every of them, and then will be video about all my books which I hadn't started yet. Thanks for your time, and I will see you very soon.